All right. So what you see in front of you here on the screen is the 6 quadrants of a discovery. The name might change by the end of this training. That's possible. I'm not going to tell you why, but you may see that here in a bit. And so, all right, we got a few more people joining here. The reason that I put this together over the past week was there was questions in the mastermind and on our last live training about how do I know when I've checked all the boxes in the discovery to confidently move on to the pitch. And we talked about that just being this more of intuitive kind of feel, kind of this click moment. But I think of a faster way to get you to the place where you're able to have that intuitive feel, aside from just doing it on many calls, is to actually have something that you can memorize and know. And so there might be the inkling to say, oh, well, I want to have this image in front of me on my calls. I do not recommend that, because now it's the same thing as having a bunch of stacked questions that you're going to ask. It takes away from you being present. And now you miss that one thing that the prospect said that could have shifted the entire call if you would have dug into it more deeply. And so this would be one of those things where you are studying this in between calls. And part of your training is just knowing these quadrants, because the reason that I can just know when I've got someone through discovery is because all of these things are in my head. They're already there, so I can check these boxes. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay.
Yes.
So here's what we're going to attempt here. I want to make this very interactive. And so as I reveal each one of these that are currently covered up, I'll riff on them, but I want you to also very thoughtfully enter in the chat box what you think are the things that are going to be specific for your offer and your archetype of customers. Because as you'll see here in a moment, and I'll just remove this one, there's not that many words, right? This is kind of a signpost, and then there's going to be many, many layers beneath each one of these. And so we'll just go through these one at a time. So now, plus attempts to cross the river. So we can just use the example of, the full stack offer. What are they doing right now to make money online? Is there something they're actively testing, they're actively trying? I know most of your clients have a job, right? So maybe that's something they're doing to bring in income. What have they done in the past to attempt to solve this problem? So this, if someone has been at it for 5 or 10 years wanting to make money online, that could be a very long conversation. If they just woke up last week and decided, I hate my job and I want to make money online, and I came across, this thing on the internet that I saw with you guys and it piqued my interest, that's a totally different conversation. So Joe, let me get to the stop here. Other things they tried, Nicole says, what have they tried? What are they trying? How have they tried to gain more time? Time wouldn't be in this quadrant. There will be another one for that. I think the other thing to keep in mind here too, when we look at these quadrants, is I've kind of put these in order of how they may go on a discovery from front to back. So more data collection. To the end of this, we'll get into thoughts, feelings, consequences, things of that nature. But at the same time, depending on what they're giving you, you might mix and match. So don't feel like you have to stick in one quadrant at a time. What they haven't done, quite common archetype, why now? Why now I wouldn't put there. You're getting, Brody, you're way too early in the process. And so that's a big mistake I'm seeing on a lot of people's calls, is they're trying to get into a lot of the deep feelings And I would much rather do those at the back part of the discovery when I'm really going to hold them accountable if necessary, as opposed to the front part. Does that make sense to everybody? Why I want to stay in data collection mostly, let's call it 80, 90, 100% of the time, the first 10, 15-ish minutes of the call. Is that confusing anybody? Okay. So what are they doing now? What has happened in the past? If they've tried other things in the past, what happened with those? If they didn't work, right? If obviously we would have to assume if we're looking at a make money online offer, the shit they tried in the past, it didn't work. So something that I'm super curious about is why didn't it work? Because that tells us so much about them. Do they put the blame squarely on themselves? Most people are probably not going to do that. You might have a person that says, well, I tried this, they were all a scam. What does that tell you if you don't address that? What's probably going to happen at the end of the call? They're not going to have the confidence to move forward because they've been quote unquote burnt in the past. Any other thoughts, comments here? If anyone wants to jump on video on the now plus attempts across the river, does that make sense?
I just had a quick question about this. So when you're comparing like done for you services and they do blame the offer, how do you want to kind of like dig into that?
So just be the prospect right now.
Okay.
What are they saying to you?
Yeah, so I mean, I've tried a few things. I invested into an Amazon automation program where they were supposed to build me a store. I gave them 60 grand, and in 2 years, I've made no money back. They've done nothing for me.
And why do you think that happened?
They didn't deliver on what they told me.
Okay. What did they deliver?
To be honest, I really don't know. I mean, I've been, messaging them weekly, it feels like, for the last 6 months to get some sort of update on, what is the status on my actual store? Where is my investment gone? And they've basically ghosted me. I feel like at this point, I don't know. I'm kind of just chalking it up as a loss.
Okay. I mean, is this an actual reputable company, or do you think that this was just an outright scam?
I mean, I thought they were. I thought they were. I mean, it's similar to what you guys kind of talk about as far as like, your marketing and, the pitch and everything. So, I mean, it seems like it's a lot of what a lot of companies tell me nowadays. And that's why I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Was there anything that you learned or took away from that experience that you think will serve you in the future, being able to decipher between, let's say a legit company and something that's a total scam?
Mm. It's interesting you put it like that. I mean, I will say that I've lost trust in what a lot of people tell me up front. And so I don't take, what companies claim as face value.
Yep.
But I almost feel like that also makes it harder for me to really trust anybody in this space.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. 60K is a lot of money. And to have them promise you the world and then you get absolutely nothing from it, tough spot. I guess the question then becomes, how do you make the most of that moving forward? Because
Well,
you could just do nothing from today on.
yeah, I mean,
Never
part of
hire
me,
anyone else. That would protect you from ever being scammed again.
true, true. I mean, part of me does feel like there is something that works out there. And, you know, I want to believe that, the videos that I've seen from you guys and the testimonials with your clients, explaining how they've gotten great results. I want to believe that because I want that for myself.
Sure. Because it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't want this past experience to dictate you to not take action in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to let, one mistake burn me twice.
Okay. Fair enough. And so what would you do differently in your evaluation phase of choosing somebody to work with in a done for you capacity that would be different than last time when you got burned?
Well, I mean, I'd really like to, and I don't know how realistic this is, but I'd like to be able to kind of like test it first to, you know, get the proof of concept before going all in with investing into you guys.
Got it. So kind of like test driving a car.
Basically, to make sure I like it.
Okay. Pause. Now, obviously, I don't know exactly what your offer does or anyone else who may have a done for you offer. Most of the time, my guess is the client is not, you're not going to be able to like let them test your thingy. Now, if that were possible, if this was a lead generation company and they had some 30-day take it or leave it type of guarantee where, hey, we give you leads for this period of time. If you're not happy, you can have your money back. Then you would have an offer that would be aligned with what this guy is saying. For most people, probably not. And so you're going to have to go deeper. And so at a certain point, I may have to repattern you on how, what it is we do with building these things. We're not able to basically allow you to test drive it. I think one example here, for example, Full Stack has a double your money back guarantee. And so while this is a little different with the done for you thing, it would be very easy to move the prospect off of that because you're basically able to say, well, hey, the great thing here is, well, you got burnt prior because of XYZ reason. Within our program during the first 90 days, if you don't, make your money back, we'll not only refund what you invested, but we'll also, pay you double on top of that type of thing. So do you see everybody what I was doing with how I was just breaking down everything that he was giving me?
Yes.
I got to see how he's thinking. Because look, if somebody robbed him for 60K, that's legit. Your ass would be chapped too if that happened to you. And so that's a reasonable thing. And so we need to talk about that. A very good sign was the fact that he said, hey, I don't want to let this hold me back from moving forward. So did you see how I put him in that place? Because I gave him the option of like, well, you could just do nothing. You could buy nothing forever. And that would guarantee that you don't get scammed. And so with somebody like that, I think you just chunk down for like probably another minute or two in the same fashion that I was going. Does that make
Hey,
sense?
Yeah.
Underground Mentor, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let you know we got people in the waiting room, or at least one.
Thank you, brother. I just got him.
Yes, sir. All right.
Okay, cool. So now plus attempts to cross the river, is that all clear? Okay, let's look at number 2. Financial situation. So I think for a make money offer, this is especially the make money offers where these people are looking to break free from a job is probably where we dig down the deepest on this. What are they making? What are their monthly bills? Is there a spouse bringing in any level of money? And what do they have in savings? Because I kind of want to know what's their monthly nut, what are they spending? How much more are they making above that? And is there any savings? Because if I'm gonna sell them a $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 thing, that's a lot of money for somebody in that position. And so I would rather flush that stuff out if that's going to be a problem in the first 5 or 10 minutes than be dealing with those objections 55 minutes in. I know there's some people in here that are on a crypto offer where they're dealing with more high net worth individuals. And so, I may see as a doctor on the application form, the guy makes, $200,000 a month, but I might have more specific things that I need to know, such as how much money does he have set aside for investment? What amount of money is he comfortable starting out with? If there's like a 20, 30K minimum with what I do in my offer, which I know there's someone in the mastermind with an offer like that, then I need to get into that kind of stuff. And then maybe the financial stuff is slightly less important, maybe with a health offer. But if I'm selling a very expensive thing and I have, let's just say, a less than qualified person financially, this is super important. Lane said willingness to invest as well on top of the financial situation. I think that's important. And so Logan is saying on the crypto offer, this is where I get into where they've invested right now, figured returns. So that would also too, Logan, that would be in the now. So what are you doing now to invest? Oh, well, I got this thing and I got this thing. Okay, how much is in the blank? Got it. And then what's in the other one? Okay, cool. So do you see how these are merging? And so while these things are in some semblance of an order, don't get caught up in that, because with the Logan one, boom, I'm banging the now and the financial investment situation, 2 birds, 1 stone. Now we're moving through that discovery a little bit quicker. So I think these are the main things. I want to get some hard numbers there. You know, and here's another example of a combo here would be in the attempts to cross the river. They say, well, you know, I did join a mastermind 2 years ago, but it didn't work out. Okay, got it. What happened? Why do you think it didn't work out? Oh, well, this XYZ thing. Cool. And if you don't mind me asking, how much was the mastermind? Right? That kind of gives you another idea here, because if they tell you, oh, it was a $20,000 mastermind. Now you have you know that this person is not afraid to put in big money to join a mastermind. Or they might tell you, oh, it was $2,000 for an entire year. And now you know it was kind of some low-level bullshit thing, and it makes a little bit more sense as to why they maybe didn't have success. Maybe they weren't actually, getting the level of attention and mentorship that they needed. Any other thoughts, comments on financial situation? Anything you think that we're missing or haven't talked about on that would be important?
Yeah, just understanding for everybody, guys, like when you're looking at these different things in the quadrant, a couple of questions you should be asking yourself is, how well do I currently cover this? And if the answer is not a 10 out of 10, what comes up for you that prevents you from covering it a 10 out of 10? And the reason I'm saying this when we're on the financial situation is so many times closers don't dig into the financial situation because they have this mind virus that's like, well, that's a little bit personal. I can't really get into that. And basically, you think it's awkward, and so you make it awkward. And so when you're looking at each of these things, think to yourself, how well do I really drill into this? And if not, what comes up for me that prevents me doing that? Because if you can master not having those things in the way, you can move yourself through this circle very swiftly and very efficiently and get to a point where you can close the deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
For
Josh,
me, it's compliance. So like the end of last year, there was a compliance meeting, and I'm trying to reword it so you're not qualifying for the cost of the offer, because that gets into compliance issues. So that's been my biggest navigation to reword it, so it's not like I'm just qualifying for the offer, but just for, where they're at. So this training has actually helped me a lot get through that mental block.
Yeah, because when I'm giving these examples here, and as you asked that question, I just thought about it. I'd never thought about it. I'm not thinking, do they have $14,800? It's more like, let me get a feel. And the reason I'm not thinking, do they have at least $14,800 is because I know that I have payment plans in my back pocket if I need to. But if they say, well, I make $3K a month, my bills are $3K a month, and I have $500 in savings. To me, that person is not financially qualified, right? Maybe they can throw it on a credit card, but they're down pretty bad. And I saw here, Tobias, you said, something similar, in our biz op, we have to be careful with questions around finances for compliance, specifically what they want to make. So the what they want to make questions, if you were going to ask them, that wouldn't be in this quadrant. We will get to a quadrant, where they can discuss that, where I would be asking that question. which we'll get to, but I have some ways that I could, if you couldn't ask, what is your goal in terms of monthly income, if that's any legal question, then I would just ask what their goals were in terms of lifestyle. What about your lifestyle right now isn't where you want it to be? What do you want to be able to do? Is there a certain, car or place that you want to live, or vacations that you want to be able to, like, I would just maneuver it that way if you have some compliance issues.
Or just what would you do with the money? You're not asking how much money. You're just saying, what would you like to do with it?
All
Hey,
right, so
underground mentor. Oh,
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead, finish your statement. I got a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Brody mentioned the whole, if they have a partner thing, we're gonna get to that in another, but during the financial situation, if they mentioned a spouse, then yeah, I would address it right then and there.
So quick question to kind of expand on Josh's point about the mind virus and being uncomfortable talking to people about income. I feel like it kind of stems from, programming as a child, that you just don't ask somebody how much money do you make because it's rude. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. It's not necessarily how I feel, but I just wanted to see if you could expand on how to remove that like type of mind virus if somebody has that conditioning on getting comfortable to be able to just ask those questions about what they make.
Think
Yeah.
about where it typically. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I assume that a lot of you have that because of the calls that I've reviewed and how often that gets danced around. So part one of the response is you identifying why those limiting things are there and actually repatterning them, right? Because I could give you one special move and maybe that, resonates with one of you and it doesn't resonate with another 20. So if there are some specific things that are coming up for you, I'd be curious to know what they are. The second thing that is just more tactical is get used to asking the financial questions in the first 5 fucking minutes. So the reason those typically come up early for me is because what I want to know at the front part are the two things you're seeing on the screen. Now, granted, I ask my opening question. They may give me all types of other data and directions that I can go. Not every call is going to be the same, but in the first 10 minutes, I want to know these two things. And so I would just get it over with as quickly as possible. Maybe it's not the first question. Hey, so how much money is in your bank account, right? Stick with your opening question, but just know that discussion around these two things, specifically finances, should happen very early on.
Get in the habit of ripping the Band-Aid off is basically the meme here.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And I just, I asked the question, not necessarily for myself, but for other people, because I think like I was probably raised up that way. But then as I grew in sales, it's like everybody was talking about how much money they made or whatever. Like, so it just got to the point to where it's like that was how you measured people up. And so I think somebody said, I think it was Nicole Finch, where, it's like if you're comfortable with your current situation, then that question's a lot easier to ask than if you're intimidated because you're not in that position. But I wanted to hear more about what you were talking about with the repatterning, if that was appropriate, or if you want to continue on.
Yeah, I think because I'm thinking about myself for a moment of, okay, well, why isn't that weird for me to ask this stuff? And we could go back through all of well, these are my beliefs and this is my history and these are my finances and this is what I've invested in. But I really think it's not weird for me to ask someone because I'm completely in a state of service and curiosity.
Right.
And I know that information matters to the service and the curiosity that I need to have to help them if I can.
Right. It's relevant to what you're selling too. It's not like you're
It's
just going up.
it's massively relevant.
Right.
This isn't a dick measuring contest.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
like, I just need to know this.
Right.
Where you at? And this is a private convo. There's no judgment here whatsoever. And my expectation energetically is that they think this is normal too.
So when you're asking these questions, the financial situation, ultimately the root of it is you're trying to figure out, A, if they can afford it, or B, if they can't afford to just pay for it outright, do they have the financial and credit means and everything, or resources to be able to afford it through other avenues? Is that pretty much what you're trying to boil down to?
Yeah, it tells me the position they're in. You know, that there are some people here where their offer actually has a downsell. And
Mm,
maybe that's the better thing for this person, for
gotcha.
where they're at. It's
Okay.
just a piece of information I need to help point them in the best direction.
Yeah, not
You know,
necessarily qualifying them per
yeah.
se, but okay. All right. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
it's like the example of the person I said who, they make 3K a month, they spend 3K a month, and they have $500 in their savings account. They're probably not the best fit for the full stack 15K mastermind. That's,
Yeah, and I think
you know,
if you were in that position, if you had somebody just come out and say it, and not in a, jerk way, but like you're trying to help them, like, dude, like, I want to be able to help you, but it sounds like you're, like you're not in a position to be able to do it. Like, they need to hear that cold hard truth, because maybe they're not in a position today, but them hearing that and facing that reality could say, like, I need to change my situation, whether it's
yeah.
now or I start to make moves for the future.
And then you can do your best to point them in the right direction.
Yeah, love it.
With full
Thank you.
stack, that might be, hey, you need to, focus on our free thingy or a couple $100 thingy and get that down and start producing results and start to bring in some more money. And then let's keep in touch.
Right.
And
Love it.
whatever that is for your offer.
Thank you, sir.
Meaning always, or one of the things that always determines meaning is the context. And so I think it was you, Jeremy, was saying, from a young age, we're taught, it's very rude to ask someone their finances. Well, why is that? Because usually the context as a child, when you're hearing about gossip, is people ask, or people want to know someone's finance because they're measuring themselves up. They want to judge people. They're being nosy. There's no intrinsically moral reason to ask that question. This is a completely different context. So the easier way to understand that is, a common meme is, you don't ask a woman their weight. Like, that's a common meme. But if you're a doctor and a woman comes into your practice and says, doctor, I'm struggling with obesity, the first thing you're going to say is, can you please step on the scale? So it's the context. It's not what you're asking, it's why you're asking it. And so obviously it's inappropriate and rude to just ask someone their financial situation in any other context. But in this case, we're asking because we care. We need to know where they're at so we can figure out what's the best move for them based on where they're at. Think of a chessboard. If the piece is here, the best move might be this move. But if the piece is in a different place, it might be a different move. So it's all context.
Yep.
Got it.
I was going to give an even funnier example there, because if a woman goes to the gynecologist and the doctor with some issue, and the doctor says, so how many times a week are you having sex? Very relevant question. Whereas if you walked up to somebody on the street and you said that, you might get smacked, or you're just going to get looked at very oddly. And the context with you being on the call is that money matters, investment matters. For most of you, you're selling an offer where someone wants to make more money and wants to improve their financial situation. And so that is a wide open conversation.
Common response that I get from people is they're guarding. They're not necessarily telling us the truth about if they have money. I've had people come in and say, I've got nothing but the basics to start this, and then I got to grow it from there. And then a week later, they call me and they say, hey, I'm going to go PIF. I got 15,000. I'm ready to go. So it's just, I don't know. That's some personalities that we deal with.
People will lie, but also too, there could be other dots that you might be able to connect, because the person that's claiming that they don't have any money, I probably would have gathered other data points prior to them being able to guard. In other words, okay, great. So what do you do for a living? Okay, I'm an attorney. Cool. And you make approximately how much a month? Blank, right? So it's going to be, I feel like it's going to be harder, not that people aren't going to lie, because they will. But if we're tactical about this, you're not going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not going to be telegraphing the fact that your ultimate goal here is to see how many dollars they have in the bank to invest right now. Because that's probably going to be the last question I ask you if I ask you it at all. You see what I'm saying there? So I think you might be putting yourself in a position with previous questions that the person kind of sees where you're trying to go, and then they put the shield up.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, cool. We,
Sorry, could I ask one question around that as well?
yep.
So I've sometimes have people who would say, oh, you know, I want to use the money that I'm making from the business rather than my own funds to invest into something or something like that. So they're not looking to like use their own money or something like that. Or they say, oh, you know, if I see that there's a fit and I see the value, then I have the money to invest kind of thing as well. So they're kind of like vague with it and shit like that. And you kind of dig into it, and some people more resistant, some people just break and just say it. But yeah, I've had situations like that as well. So I want to know your thoughts on those.
Well, what was the question you asked them before they said that?
Sometimes it'll be like, you know, okay, so you know, do you currently have like a budget set aside to invest into the business or something like that? Like asking like if they actually have something set aside to put into the business at the moment.
So,
If financial situation is like quite bad with the business.
But
yeah,
that's
so
because
make
you're
sure,
assuming it's to invest. You're
Yeah,
you're already
yeah.
leading the question, so they're
Yeah.
going to guard themselves.
of course. And if you're going to say that, make sure it's one of the last questions, because what I want to
Yeah.
know up front is, cool, so what is your business making right now? Got it. Okay, you made this last month. What about the month before? Okay, cool. And profit margins on each one of those months? Okay, cool. So it sounds like total profit was this for this and this for this. Got it. Right? Do you see how I'm collecting upfront data that allows me to know before you actually can potentially tell your lie or become guarded? Because
Yeah.
I'm not telegraphing.
Yeah, and I'd also those questions. It would usually ask like the budget question if I find out like they're not doing so well with their business and like they don't have any of sources of income. So I'm just trying to see if they have savings maybe to put into the business, like set aside or something. Like if they're already doing well, then I know they'll have, you know, at least some money to put into it, right? But just maybe one of those that they might not have a lot of money. I'm seeing if they have savings or something like that.
Okay, so my brain is already coming up with ways to where we cannot telegraph. And I'm not saying that this is perfect, because I came up with this in 2 seconds, but if they were in this tough spot, right, and you're concerned that they don't have enough wiggle room, you could ask something effective. Well, let me ask you this: if your company stopped bringing in new revenue, how long until you'd be out of money completely? Do you see how I'm not doing the bullshit, you know, to reinvest, right? Like the thing that I'm starting to see and realize is that the game has changed on these calls compared to back in 2020 and 2021, when I was, you know, training Josh at the peak on, you know, an offer that I owned. And then as I see your guys and gals calls here in 2024, I'm realizing the market has shifted to where people kind of know what a strategy session is. And so a lot of these stock questions that are being asked, I'm just seeing so much telegraphing. It's like the prospect, like they know what you're doing, and that guard can come up. Whereas if we take a different approach, they literally don't even see it coming. If you make it obvious you're going to take my watch off my wrist, I can put my guard up. But if I don't even see it coming, that shit slipped right off and you got it in your pocket. And that's the difference. So a lot of times if you're getting a certain reaction, when you get off that call, you need to go re-review exactly what did you say before they did that. Because the grand majority of the time, it's going to be on you. You telegraphed, you made it obvious.
And this is why it's so important, guys, to learn communication flexibility, not just, okay, I've got to get the financial question in, got to get this piece of data. There's one way that I can ask that, and I'm going to say it that way, because eventually you'll just burn out with saying the same question over and over again, whilst every other salesperson is saying that question over and over again, and the effectiveness of it will diminish. You know, the undergrad mentor was giving an example there of revenue this month, the previous month before that, profit margin. It's very easy from there to kind of get into, okay, got it. And so what are you currently doing in terms of that profit? Oh, we just sit it in a bank. Okay. So I don't have to mention the word investing or reinvesting or spending it or budget. I just say, cool. And typically, what are you doing with the profit? They're just going to tell me, oh, I'm nothing. Got it. Okay, cool. So now I know, okay, 2K 3 months ago, 2K 2 months ago, 2K last month, there's 6K somewhere. But I would never say, if we find that what we have is a fit, do you have the funds available, or walk me through your budgetary parameters? I'm not going to say that because it's just so telegraphed.
When you say telegraphed, I think what you mean is it's obvious that you're asking a question so you can get leverage over them and back them into a corner.
Ask Julian.
Yep.
So Julian's a boxer.
Yep.
If someone can see you winding up for the punch before you take the punch, they're just going to be like this. It's not going anywhere. You can't
Yep.
wind up for the punch and then it's just not going to land. That's telegraphing, basically.
Yep. Just making it obvious what you're doing. It's like, oh, you are attempting to manipulate me. Awesome. So we're attempting to use force, so now we are attracting a counter force. Like, what if I connect all the dots and the light bulb goes off for you and we're the best person to help you? Why the fuck do I need to manipulate you? I don't. You just told me these are your problems. You told me this is what you want to accomplish. We figured out why you've screwed this up in the past. You're not willing to make that same mistake again. You know, like, and trust us. And this is something you want to do right fucking now. Awesome. I can tell you about what it is we do if you'd like. Great. And that's where I think the consumer is much more savvy, is they're much more aware of these manipulation techniques. Okay, cool. Let's get into number 3. Oh, shit. I actually have the wrong thing there. This is an old slide. Huh. Okay, so trust. And what I mean by trust is trust in the vehicle. So for example, we can talk about a crypto offer. If you have a crypto offer that's about yield farming, and this person has never invested even in Bitcoin or Ethereum, which are the two, big name brand trusted cryptocurrencies, and isn't sure whether those are a scam or not, why would they take the leap to invest in your yield farming mastermind? Like that.
I'm not sure how many people are going to know yield farming. So maybe a different metaphor is, if you rock up to the Ferrari dealership and you don't even have your driving license and you're 16 years old, the dealer's probably going to think, well, hang on a minute, let me just dig in a little bit deeper here into what's going on.
So with like an e-com offer, if someone wasn't sold on the fact that e-com was a real thing in a multi-billion-dollar, industry, which granted in this day and age would be pretty tough to find someone like that, that's an issue. So we just have to know that they're actually sold on the vehicle. If someone believes that making money online is like a total scam and they're not even bought into that, why would they be bought into our online money making thing? Like we got to stop there and we've got to go right at that. And then the next trust thing is your brand, your guru. What's the level of trust? How long have they followed you? Right? There's some questions centered around that. Oh, well, I came across your, YouTube channel. Oh, nice. How long ago was that? If it was a week ago, or it was 10 months ago, that tells me two completely separate things, right? I'm sure you've all had like a raving fan on the phone before of your brand or your guru. We all know that that's a significantly easier sale than the person who says, well, I saw your ad 3 days ago. Never heard of you guys prior. Noted. That matters. And then how much do they trust themselves? I forget whose call it was that I reviewed in the last couple of weeks. It was so clear this person's level of trust for themselves was massively low based off past experiences. So we got to talk about that. Like if they don't trust themselves when the rubber meets the road at the end of the call and it's parting ways with $6,000 or $12,000, they're going to be too afraid to invest because they're going to think, oh, well, I'm probably just going to fuck this thing up like I did all the other stuff. So I might as well just hold on to the money as opposed to spending it and losing it when I screw this thing up. And I'm just updating this. I showed up on here with version 1.1 instead of version 1.2.
Just a quick one on trusting them. Yeah, oh, sorry, is it?
Yeah, do your thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so let's say you asking around like how much they know about you and stuff like that, and they just give like a very like, not a great response. Oh, I just saw your ad yesterday or something like that. Then are you kind of unselling at that point, redirecting them to content, booking a follow-up call? Are you going to continue with the call? What do you think is the best approach with those sort of situations when they just like basically know nothing about you?
So the first thing I'm going to do is dig, right? So like, oh, I saw an ad a few days ago. Okay, cool. And what do you recall what was in that ad? Okay, got it. And then so I'm assuming you watched the VSL. Yeah, I saw part of it. Cool. What was it that like stood out to you when you were watching it that made you say, hey, I'm going to take a few minutes here and fill out this application? Right. So I'm going to dig a little more. And if I really feel, especially with your offer, Ben, where there is a higher level of trust and partnering and things like that, then yeah, I may not pitch that person. Now, if I'm selling a $5,000 health offer to a person who's financially qualified, I may give a little less of a shit about that and then still roll into the pitch if the other things are aligned. So I think the context of your offer, your price point, the level of trust, that matters. So for you, there would be a higher likelihood that you would say, hey, the people who come into our program and the partnership and XYZ, the level of trust that they have is typically a lot higher. They've gotten to know our brand. And so before I try to figure out further whether this is a fit for you or not, there's a couple things that I want you to consume to actually ensure that it is. So I wouldn't immediately disqualify him, but I would dig deeper. And if what I found out when I dug deeper was that this guy like barely knows who the hell we are, I wouldn't try to sell that guy for your offer in this context.
No, that's
Does
good
that kind of
clarification. Because that's what I've been more so doing is like digging into it, finding out actually how much they know, and if it's just like absolutely nothing, then I'm just like, okay, look, it's best if we just like look through content, book another call.
Yeah, because it's almost like, oh, okay, so you really didn't watch much of the VSL, you just kind of filled out an application. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm assuming you probably didn't see the page with like the half dozen testimonials either. No, I didn't see that. Okay, got it. No worries. So here's what I think is best, because I have gotten a chance to find out a lot about your business, and I do think there is alignment there. But the clients who come into our partnership program, they're very clear on who we are as a brand and the accomplishments that our clients have had. And so what I think we should do is book another call a few days out from now. And in the meantime, I want you to go do XYZ. If the guy's serious, he'll be okay with that. If he's just a window shopper, then he may not like that, but he wasn't going to buy anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm just looking at the comments here, guys. Let me know if you have anything else, and if not, we'll move on to number 4.
Yeah, the one question I was thinking about as far as like if they don't trust themselves, going back, I guess part of that could tie into asking the questions with the previous attempts to cross the river, and reframing their mind in terms of like, okay, have you tried this before? What was your result? Were other people successful in the program before? Why do you feel like they were successful when you were not? And asking, kind of reframing their mind on if they're ready to put out the effort this time compared to last time or something. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts as far as reframing them or giving them some certainty?
Well, Lou had a call like this recently that I reviewed where the lady came through their free or lower ticket thingy and did like a weekend workshop and set her thingy up, and it didn't make any sales. But other people in the group that were in the Facebook group, they did make sales. And
Right.
so there was clear proof this thing works, but for this lady, for whatever reasons, she didn't make any sales. So yeah, you do have to dig into like, why does she think that took place? Okay, cool. You saw other people in the group made sales. Like she literally said that on the call. So then I would be going into, well, what do you think they did differently? Now, once I flushed all of her mental models out, then I would provide the context, which Lou did do in the call. He said, well, obviously when you have something up and live for 2 days and you've only generated 22 leads, there's elements of randomness that, you may not make a sale immediately. And one of those leads may turn into a sale in a week or a month from now. There's things that are outside of your control, but I wouldn't try to provide that context or that repatterning until I just pulled all the data I can out of them.
Yeah, makes sense. Same thing with the unselling. You don't unsell. You're still trying to collect more, giving them benefit of the doubt on one or two things, but then putting the whole piece of the picture together before you go for the unsell, correct?
Yeah, the unsell is a last resort.
Okay.
You don't want to look at it as like, oh, well, there's this cool shiny thing that like Josh taught me, and I'm gonna, this person has given me a little resistance, so I'm just gonna be a fucking badass and unsell. Like it's basically like, all right, I've asked enough things, enough ways, and I have to bring this up now because otherwise there's no point in us being on this call anymore.
It's like a come to Jesus moment, basically.
Yeah. And also I want to have collected enough data that it's irrefutable, that you can't argue it. So if I say, Jeremy, there's something that I've noticed that I want to bring to your attention. Is it okay if I'm direct with you? Yes.
Sure.
So, when we went through and you told me about your past experiences trying to figure out how to make money online, you told me a story about A company, B company, C company, and D company. Like I'm giving these very specific things. And every time you talked about each one of those companies I just mentioned, the reason that you weren't successful every time was their fault. And I understand that things like that do happen. You hire somebody and they don't live up to their word. Look, I've had it happen to me as well. But when I hear the same story 4 times in a row and the blame is squarely placed on the other person, and you're the only singular person who's involved in all 4 of those situations. Do you see where I'm going there, Jeremy?
Absolutely.
So that was a bad, the copy there wasn't good, but
Right.
all I would have been doing is taking exactly what you had told me and then connecting the dots to say, well, that's leading me to think that if you get involved in another program in the future, that there would just be another excuse that would have nothing to do with you not showing up as the person that you needed to be.
Right.
And maybe that's a more like extreme, direct, really going at the person example. But the meme is, if you've connected enough dots, show them what you've connected and tell them about it. Now, through questions, I would ideally like to avoid that situation of having to tell them right to their face and unsell, but some people won't see the light bulb even if it goes off for you.
Makes sense. Thank you. By the way, I think Rob's in the waiting room.
Yep, I just got him. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's roll in number 4, which, as you saw, was originally decision makers, and then I added time. While these two are very different from each other, I stuck them in the same quadrant because neither of them deserve their own quadrant. And I think these are typically going to be very quick. And so they just got thrown into the same one. Now, you might get into decision makers when you talk about finances, or on your first question, the prospect brings up something about the spouse. But if you don't get into it, this is another decent area to talk about it as far as this being in somewhat of an order, right? Is the wife or the husband involved in the decision? Is there a business partner? And if there isn't any of that, then cool, you move on. And then another simple one is time. A lot of you with the make money offers, these people have a job. Okay, cool. You're doing this, how many hours you're working a week. And then you could circle back when you get to this section and say, so I know you mentioned you're doing blank and you're working about 45 hours a week. How many hours a week do you have to dedicate to building an e-com store? So we're just checking the box here that they're not going to give us some bullshit decision maker or time excuse at the end of the call after we've dropped the price. So I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but any questions, thoughts, floor is yours.
I have a quick question on that. Like for us, we're on a trading offer, and when it comes to days, obviously trade on specific times. I get that information mostly in the now, like what are you doing now in terms of trading? What session did you trade on? Would that be still okay to fit it in there?
You absolutely could. So I'm assuming that with the markets, they have to trade between like 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, USA time. Is that correct? Or is it something else?
Mostly they're on there. Like if that's obviously they trade crypto or something like that, then it's obviously open end. But other than that, it's mostly the New York AM session. Yeah.
And this is such a quick and easy question that if you wanted to slide it in up front when you're going through, okay, what do you do now? Okay, you're doing this, and what hours do you work? Got it. Okay, and so, well, let me ask you this: you're working 9 to 5 at blank. Are you going to have specific times during the day that you're going to be able to access, the internet, get to a device, and be able to actually make trades? And they're like, oh yeah, definitely. Cause I have, this lunch break, and then I have this other break, and whatever else. So yeah. I would just talk about it then, because that's super unique to your offer. And this is a great example of making sure you go deep on each one of these 6 quadrants for your offer. Because most of you, right, you have the 24/7 online community and membership area. So it doesn't matter what time this person works. As long as they say, yep, hey, I got 10 hours a week I can dedicate to this, they're good. Whereas that is not the case with his offer, right? They actually do have to be available at, certain days at certain times. So that's very good.
At a little point, I was curious if you could riff on. So one of the things that you taught me indirectly, you never actually told me to do it, but with the time question, was phrasing the time question in terms of the result rather than what they have to put in to get the result. And so when we had the accelerator offer, instead of me saying in terms of readiness, are you in a position now where you could carve out time to go through a course, to turn up to live training, and to, go through the training for us to teach you how to do this? The way we would phrase the question was, in terms of readiness, are you in a position now where you could get out on 2 or 3 dates a week? And so we were always phrasing the timing in terms of, do you have the time to enjoy and experience the result? Which, indirectly says they've obviously got to put in the work. But I'm curious if you wanted to explain that or riff on that, if that makes sense.
You broke up there. You broke up there a little bit, but I think I saw where you were going with that. And to me, that offer is very unique, that accelerator offer, because I think when we say 2 or 3 dates a week, there's a lot of open-endedness on how much time and energy a date takes. Mm-hmm. So I think if we, pulled the crowd here and we said, how long do you think a date takes? Someone in here might say an hour, and another person might say 3 or 4 hours. And on top of that, the opinion that you have on the energy and time suck of going on 2 or 3 dates a week could be very different from the next person in here. Because one person thinks, oh, well, cool. Like there's this coffee shop, a 20-second walk from my apartment. I'm going to go meet her there for 30 minutes. Fuck yeah. I can do 2 or 3 of those a week. Another guy thinks, well, I only like to do these 3-hour dinner dates. Right. And so I think the The onus in that question really was, I don't want him to get to the end of the call, make the offer and have him say, man, this sounds so amazing. I have this work project I want to finish up the next 30 to 45 days. And then like, I'm ready then, man. Like, let's get those dates cranking. And so if you're offering something that could be construed like that, then the way that we would ask that was very much better than saying, oh, hey, do you have 10 hours a week? Like, are you in a place in your life right now where you can handle going on 2 or 3 days a week? The other thing that question is doing on the sneak is we're future pacing. We're not even saying like, well, if we so happen to generate you 2 or 3 dates per week, so are you ready to go on 2 or 3 dates per week? It's under the assumption that when we turn this shit on, it's game on, which is obviously going to give that person a level of confidence.
It's just something I've always used on everything I've sold since then. I've always said, instead of saying, hey, are you in a position where you have the readiness and the capacity to go through the online training course to learn how to do this, I would have always said, are you in a position now where you have the readiness and the capacity to start, generating income from an outside, a business on the outside of your 9 to 5? Always trying to add in that future pacing and kind of implying it as to get the result, as opposed to put in the time to learn how to get the result, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. I don't see a need to have a specific set number of hours and to say,
Yeah.
do you have at least, it's not necessary. Like what you're saying accomplishes everything. And if the prospect asks if they follow up with a minimum amount of time, obviously give them one. I'm sure you know what it is for your offer, but what you're saying there is perfect.
Does that make sense to everybody else as well? How I'm trying to phrase it as, do you have the time, are you ready to get the result? Not, are you ready to go through an online course? Because it's just not as appealing to people.
Yeah, it's like, hey, with everything that you have going on, at the job and, XYZ stuff you told me about your family, does now feel like a time where you're ready to, dedicate a certain level of energy and focus to making this happen now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Everything clear on that? Decision makers, time, got to know them. Otherwise, those are easy objections at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, let's open up these. I'm going to open up these next two at once. These are very connected. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I think we would have a lot of overlap if you didn't see the others. So I kind of see these in stages while there is overlap, their why, like why do they really want to leave this job? Yeah, we know the money thing, great, but is it, they hate the commute an hour back and forth. They're missing the kids' soccer games. Money is an issue. It's creating a lot of arguments at home, right? I don't want my wife to have to work anymore. Like what are the real whys behind this person wanting to have an online business or whatever result? Because the more of these that we can stack, the more powerful we are if we have to dig into them on consequences and their commitment level for changing those things. And then also having that connects into that why they want these things, like what's the new reality of, well, like I don't want my wife to work anymore. Great. Any specific reason why? Like what would that do for her? Oh, well, she could stay home with the kids and she could do this and she could do that. Got it. And what do you think that would do for you and her's relationship? Oh, well, oh my God. Okay, cool. Right. You see where we're going there? Like why? New reality. And then they've given you all of this amazing shit, ideally. And then we can, I'm sure you guys have your questions. This is the thing that the majority of you are very good at, is getting into the pain. It's just oftentimes before we started to really focus on this discovery stuff, a lot of that shit was coming out at the beginning. And so now we can just simply take all that stuff that they've given us and potentially connect that to any of the blocks that they gave us as we were dot connecting, and ensure that those blocks are not going to get in the way of these amazing things that they told us they wanted in the why and the new reality. And if there is any resistance to that, making sure that they understand the consequences of not taking action, that they're actually clear on that. Does that make sense? You know, you had a call, Jeremy. I'm sure you'll remember it. It was with a guy who bought. So that's probably, I know most call reviews people aren't buying, but this guy bought, and his wife was in the other room.
Yeah.
And while I gave you a bunch of feedback on, you know, things that need to be improved,
Right.
if I was going to drill down why that guy gave you money, it's because you held him here and he understood the consequences, and you got into commitment, and you got into why he wanted, like you had him hung up on this. I don't remember really what happened in these other areas. I know you did talk about his, you know, financial situation and what he was
He was
doing
making
now.
$3,000 a month and all
Right?
that. Yeah.
This is why the guy bought. So like you could crush all these upfront things here, but if you don't nail these two, you can be in a tough spot.
They'll wiggle out of it. They'll, you know, if you don't hold them their feet to the fire, right?
Yep. Okay, so I have a question you probably didn't think you'd hear on this, but I want to know, what is this circle missing? Is there something that wouldn't fall under one of these sixes, like a bullet point? Because I know these are kind of the surface level and they go way deeper. Is there, should there be a seventh quadrant?
I'm wondering a little bit about the solution. Like, what would the ideal solution need to look like for you to cross the river?
Yeah, I was
New
gonna say-
reality.
There's no
Okay.
goal.
Oh, well, I mean, not necessarily the new reality, because that's like what it will look like when they cross the river. But like, how are they going to get across the river? Like, what's the ideal solution? I can get you across on a inner tube, or I can get you across on a motorboat. You know.
Vehicle.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
okay.
the closest thing that would tie into would be vehicle, I think.
Okay.
And
Why
so
this thing rather than another thing? You know,
Yeah.
why e-commerce to be your second source of income, not, you know, becoming a freelancer?
Right. If you just want to make more money, there's a lot of ways to make money. Why this?
Correct.
because the way that I see this playing out is that this photo here is step one. And then each of you need to go get a few pieces of paper, and you need to fill in all of your things for, okay, now plus attempts across the river that are unique to the offer. You know, for example, with Fabian, he has something unique that he needs to put in there that most of you won't have in there at all. And so literally having the specifics of what are the things that I need to know specific to this offer for each one of these sections. And I don't know how long that's going to be, a half page, a page, whatever it is, but that's basically where you go deeper. And again, those pages and this photo here, you should not be looking at that on your call.
Just
This
say
is
that.
stuff, this is stuff that you need to memorize and just absolutely know. But I don't think this is enough on its own. You've got to actually section out each one of these things and do a brain dump on what are the things that I need to know for each one of these for my offer. You know, if I have a health offer and this person is a doctor and makes $50,000 a month or whatever, I probably am not going to ask them what they have in the bank if I have a 5K health offer. Probably doesn't matter. I'm dealing with a very affluent person, right? Whereas the situation completely changes if I have a make money offer and someone who is, you know, in a very low paying job, different context. And so you need to think about what is that context for you in your offer.
I know on the it was a couple of weeks ago, a couple calls ago, you mentioned desire was one of the big, like that was one of the first things. Where would you find put desire into
Yeah,
this?
I think that's definitely commitment level.
Okay.
So that would be like one of the questions or the memes or the things that you would have in that section would be that for sure.
One other thing, I want to just go backwards very quickly. When we're talking about commitment level and stacking the the desires or stacking the consequences, just bear in mind having 5, 6, 7 low resolution reasons or consequences is probably going to do very, very little for you. What matters more is that for each of the reasons or the desires that are significant, how specific have you gotten into those? And so probably one of my most favorite questions that the underground mentor taught me, there was different ways to word it, because obviously, we don't use word tracks, but was something like, okay, and was there any particular signature moment or turning point for you where you had enough with basically living this reality, insert specifics? Because just getting them to tell you why something is important, they'll often give you a very low resolution response. But then when you get to know the turning point or the moment of change or the frustration point that they hit, that's where you really, in my opinion, tie them down very, very heavily. So it's not just about stacking as many of these as you can. Okay, the person wants to build an e-commerce store because they've got this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, and this reason. Yeah, it's probably not going to do very much for you, as opposed to the one thing where they say, well, my wife wants us to have more money. Okay, was there any particular moment where she wanted something and you had to say, we can't buy that right now? Oh yeah, 2 weeks ago. Okay, and how did that make you feel? Okay, how much longer do you want to go into that situation and continue living that reality? It's when you add those questions to go deeper that makes all the difference.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add into that, Josh, is even layering in one more question on how long that's been going on for. So when he brings up the fact
Yep.
that, well,
Was that the first time or?
Yeah, there's been this, this money thing. It's like, okay, how long has that been going on for? And the reason that it is doing one thing, one is hiding any telegraphing, but it's creating more context for the next question of, okay, got it. So she, and when you brought this whole thing up, Josh, the example you were giving was from the old dating offer. And so if the guy has been screwing around with dating apps and basically the reality that most of these guys had on these calls was that they could get dates, but it wasn't with the types of women they wanted to be dating. That was the number one archetype of our clients. And so, okay, got it. So like you're getting dates, you're getting laid from time to time. It's not super consistent, but these aren't really the women you want to be dating. How long has that been going on for? Basically forever. Or at a minimum, they're going to tell you a few years. Okay, got it. And so I get that this has been going on for X amount of time that they told you. Was there anything that happened recently where you just said enough is enough? Because I'm just wondering, this has been going on for so long. Why is it we're talking now? And he might say, well, a couple of weeks ago, I had this date booked and I went out and I did all this stuff beforehand. And then I showed up and she never came. And I went out to my car. I was so fucking pissed. And, I decided not another day. Cause like that event is probably out of his mind. And so I want to bring that event here. I want to bring the pain that led him to take the action of, seeking us out or seeing our ad online and filling out an application into this moment. If it exists, I'd like to find it. So I'm clear. Okay, got it. So that's the moment where you said, okay, I have to get this handled. And he says, yes. Okay, cool. Much higher level of commitment. And it should be very clear why I ideally want to be having that conversation towards the end of the discovery, as opposed to the front part of the discovery. I want that as close to the price rollout as possible.
Without wanting to confuse people, sometimes, and so I don't know if now is the time for us to talk about it, there wasn't an epiphany. And that's the very thing that's kept them where they're at. So I'm not sure if you want to do a quick drill on that. Basically, like, okay, do you think part of the problem in regards to you not getting, in this case, your dating life solved, has been the fact that you've just been willing to tolerate continuing to go on these dates with women that you're not even that interested in? Do you think that is part of the problem? So you see where I'm going with that? Like sometimes there isn't an epiphany and you have to address the fact that, well, sure, you can just wait until, you have this epiphany, but you've been waiting for 2 years to have a turning point or a, you know, a come to Jesus moment. Do you think continuing to wait for some lightning strike that may never happen is why you've not got this figured out? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many ways that you can take that. And I know we would have guys like that on the call. And so, you know, one thing you could do is you could almost, once you've connected all the dots, you've got all the information, you could potentially unsell. You could potentially, it's one of those places where you're in a slight place of confusion. It's kind of like, you know, I hear that, you know, you've been going on these dates with a lot of women that aren't the ones you really want to be dating. But if I can be direct with you, it doesn't sound like it's bothering you that much. Oh, well, yeah, I guess it's not. Eh, That's a problem. Can I tell you why? Yeah, sure. So our clients who come into our, you know, system, company, whatever, and have their entire dating life automated so that they don't have to do any of the grunt work, they can just go on the dates. They're in a place where they know they need to change now. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're sick of swiping. They're sick of getting ghosted. They're sick of going on dates with women that are below the level that they want to be on dates with, and they want to change that now. I'm not hearing that from you. So do you see how I'm giving him the example of what our clients are like and how he's not? And so now he has the opportunity to tell me that he's like our clients, or just to say, hey man, you know what? You're right. I'm not in a place where I'm that motivated right now. That's all good, brother. If that happens to change at any time in the future, you know, we're here. Feel free to reach out. And it was a pleasure to connect with you today.
And then they'll squirt. Well, can you just kind of tell me how the program works?
No.
Because right now we just simply don't have alignment. And so
Yeah.
if that
Yeah, I
changes,
wouldn't want to waste your time or mine getting into details that wouldn't serve you where you're at. Because the best thing that I can do for you right now is give you the time to actually get more clarity on where you are right now. Because I think that while we've had you know, a decently open and honest conversation on this call, I think the most open and honest conversation that needs to happen is the one you have with yourself when we hang up here.
Maybe we could put the unsell underneath consequences there.
well, the unsell is kind of like at any
Yeah.
point, maybe not financial
Yeah.
situation or the now,
No.
but in the trust vehicle, decision maker time, why new reality commitment. If at any point you're gathering the data and you're like,
Yeah. Okay.
what I'm getting and what I need for this to be a successful client is not aligned,
Yeah.
you tell them.
Makes sense. Okay, I
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah, I
All
wouldn't
right.
I wouldn't put it in the quadrants. It's its own nation state, the unsell.
Okay.
And again, we ideally don't want to use it. I'm hoping to not
Right.
use it.
Right.
But it, you know, when in Rome.
Question on that as well. So like how the unsell is kind of universal is things like getting their mental models as well, kind of universal in these 6 quadrants as well.
100%. Some of it's drier, right? Like their financial situation, you know, very tactical, make this, spend this, got this in the bank. I'm not really facilitating a mental model there, but there may be some mental models around investing or spending money that we're going to talk about at a certain point for sure. Because that's like the easiest way to sell you something is to know exactly how you think. Because then I can speak to you in the way that you can understand the best. I can relate to you in that way much, much easier.
This is the old adage of like when people say they haven't invested because they don't want to feel, you know, unsafe by investing money. And there's a long list of things you have to go through before you get directly to this point, but ultimately getting to the reframe / come to Jesus moment with the prospect, basically saying, got it. And so getting to the end of every month, having $2,000 coming in and 1,900 going out, how safe do you feel now? Well, I don't, because I got no savings and no surplus. Got it. What would you need to do so that in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months, you do have the safety and you do have the security that you would like to feel? getting them to shift their perspective that what they think is being safe and having security by not investing is the very thing that's preventing them actually having safety and security. But there's obviously a big gap in the middle that I missed out there. But that's where you're getting into people's beliefs and helping them realize that usually the beliefs that they think are serving them are the very things that are robbing them of what they want. That makes sense.
Yeah, like and could that even be like dot connecting maybe as one separate thing, like connecting the dots, or could you say that
Again, kind of a universal as you go
This-
through all of
yeah.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing is the dots. Cause I don't know which are gonna be the dots that are the ultimate connections and what matters the most. Cause I come into it, this is a clean slate, benefit of the doubt. I have no idea what's gonna happen with this person. The dot just might be you get into a program and you get momentum and you reach a little bit of resistance, a little bit of a roadblock, and you quit. Because you told me you tried these 3 other things. I dug into those 3 with you. That was the ultimate reason why the 3 didn't work out. And you just told me it right in a row, but you probably never admitted it to yourself. And so when I summarize and say, okay, got it. So it sounds like basically the same thing happened in all 3 of these programs. Is that fair to say? Yes. Okay. And based off what you're telling me, it sounds like you hit the point of resistance and then you basically lost focus and gave up. Got it. I guess the question I have for you now is, how are you going to ensure you do not repeat that pattern? Right? Because what we want to know is, why is it going to be different now? Now, notice how I phrase that a little differently. I didn't say, why is it going to be different now? Because, right, that's another kind of sounds like a canned, heard it before type of thing. So we change it up a little bit.
Was just about to get into that. Can you guys hear the very unique pulling from both ends combination of challenging someone and encouragement? It's like, how are you going to ensure that doesn't happen again? On one hand, it's very encouraging. So it's like, well, I want you to do better. I want you to be better. I want you to get this sorted. But on the other hand, you are holding the mirror up and saying, well, how are you going to ensure that doesn't happen again? And that is the kind of the energy dynamic of a unicorn closer, is being able to pull from both of these ends. You're not dictating to them. You're not trying to sell them or persuade them, but you're not fucking Tony Robbins, like trying to clap, hey, let's come out clapping and, get everybody rah-rah. You're doing both at the same time in a very, very, very well orchestrated way.
So the reason that I said that the way that I did really in my mind only comes from the positionality of, why would my business or the offer I'm selling want to bring in a person who quit on their last 3 programs? So as opposed to thinking, well, how do I repattern them, or how do I manipulate them, or how do I make the sale based off that information? Just, this person has a track record of meeting resistance and quitting. And whether they refunded those products or left bad reviews, which I probably don't know the answer to those items, why would I want to bring a person in who is going to be a refund risk, regardless of what they did on those other ones, because of the fact that they meet resistance and they quit?
Whereas what a lot of you guys sometimes do as closers is you try and give them the answers. You say, well, could you do this in order to be successful? Or could you maybe do it that way? What the underground mentor is saying is like complete non-attachment and non-neediness to this person. In other words, you convince me that you've already figured out how you're going to make sure that doesn't happen, or why you're not going to allow it to happen again. And then I'll consider ongoing this conversation. It's like, well, you tell me that you've already figured this out. I'm not here to give you the answers, because then what the hell are you going to do when I'm not here to hold your hand? And I'm not there to hold your hand inside the program. So
yeah, it's like, what if I ask that question and they're like, well, I'll make sure this time. Why didn't you make sure the other times? Right? Because I'll make sure this time is not that ain't gonna cut it. That's not I'm not rolling into the pitch with you if that's that's not the box we're checking off to say, oh, okay, they got it. Yep, they got it. No, they don't. No, they fucking don't.
How many of you have ever done that, by the way? Just curious. Oh, yeah, they've
Right?
convinced me. They've
Yep.
convinced me.
I just this time's gonna be different.
Smoking that hopium, guys.
All right, so does this help bring a lot of visual clarity, guys? Again, don't be looking at this on your calls. Study this in between, study this before, after. And then the homework is to start mapping out your documents with the discussions that can or will come up on the call. And when you're filling these things out, you won't always get into every single thing that you drill down for, trust, vehicle, solution, brand themselves. Because you might have somebody who's totally confident in themselves. All right. The entire time they're confident. Hey, when I take action, I do X, Y, Z. You don't even have to have that conversation. Because you're like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with a confident motherfucker. But in your document, you do need to have some things in there for when you are dealing with someone who isn't that confident, and the conversations that may need to take place around that. So be prepared for all situations as you create a doc for each one of these quadrants, and then just study them and just know them, because that's what you're going to bring to the call. I've never written a document for one of these things, but I have them all in my head. But instead of waiting, 20 years to have them in your head through 20 years of business and selling and all of that, just do it now and knock this out and have it down pretty damn good in, 12 weeks instead of 12 years.
I do have a question. The other day I was on a call. It was, I was hopeful that it was going to be a sales call, but I feel like when I was in the quadrant of the now and the previous attempts to cross the river, I felt like they weren't really in a position to where right now they were ready for something. And so if you feel like in your first like 5 minutes or so that they're not even in a position to continue on, I know it doesn't necessarily have to be linearly or in order so much, but if you get the feeling in the first quadrant there that it's just not the right fit or not the right time, do you go ahead and ask some of the other questions to kind of confirm that?
It's
Or
possible, but what's the actual context here? What made you feel that way? What do they tell you that?
yeah,
gave
and
you the impression?
I thought about uploading the call because I feel like I just either did a really shitty job in trying to do a discovery, or I just really felt like they weren't really a fit. So the context of the call was, I sell sales training for home improvement companies. The guy has an electrical / plumbing business, and they want to start selling walk-in bathtubs, if I'm not mistaken, or no, water softeners, like water softeners and water, reverse osmosis and stuff like that. And they wanted to get their sales process refined. Right now, their technicians go out to fix a toilet leaking, and then they go and try to like upsell them instead of $100 flap or $1,000,
Yeah.
whatever. And I just felt like, first of all, you have no sales reps, you have no leads, you have nothing like you
Oh,
want
okay.
me
So
to
they don't even have any sales reps.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So like one of the things, for example, that you should define with your program is that you only work with teams of a certain size.
Okay.
Because then you don't even get on this call, because somewhere in the application or the pre-texting, you would
Yeah.
have found out sales team 0.
Okay.
Like Josh has a minimum, sales team size and dollar amount that he'll work with.
Right. Makes
And
sense.
so there's people that apply that are doing 80,000 a month in sales, and they have 1 salesperson or 2 salespeople.
Jeremy
Gotcha.
knows because he keeps sending them to me. I say they're not ready yet.
It's just we're just not getting on the call. Like we've defined the archetype of client that we
Right.
serve. And so this would be something that you need to stop getting on the phone with these people if you simply don't want to work with people that don't even have a sales team, which I
Yeah.
would steer away from that. Unless your offer was, I'm going to build you a sales team from
Right.
scratch, then
Right.
that would
And
be different.
you're 100% right. You mentioned in one of the comments on one of the threads about it's because you don't have enough leads. Like I was just like, fuck it, I just want to get on to practice my call.
Yep.
And then I was just like, dude, we're way putting the cart before the horse here. But thank you. You just helped me confirm that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got a
Thoughts?
question. Let's say
Yep.
like you're like not 100% on one of these, but you kind of want to dig into the next quadrant because you want to see, is there something there that I can leverage to make up for that not being 100% on that other thing, if that makes sense. So like
You could absolutely do that because you got a little bullet point, you know, a little mark on your paper that you're going to come back to this. Maybe you feel the conversation is getting stale. He's kind of closed off. And so you want to pattern interrupt, jump into something else. But he's at least given you enough that you feel like, hey, this call still has a shot, but I'm still not going to roll into the pitch until we've handled this.
yeah, exactly. Because like I've noticed sometimes I've got like maybe like an amber light, not like a red light on something, and like I'll dig into other things and then circle back to it at the end of the discovery.
Yeah, because then you could say you could go to those other things and then you come back, you say, okay, got it. I'm on the same page with all this. You know, there's just one thing that is a bit of a red flag, or that we just don't have enough that I don't have enough context on yet to know if you would be a fit or not. And that's the blank. And so what I'm wondering is blank. So yeah, you can't let them off the hook.
Any other questions, guys? Takeaways?
Sorry, maybe I missed it a little bit in my notes here, but because I got notes on every single other pillar, but maybe one thing I missed were what were some potential questions or line of questioning for themselves in the trust quadrant and in the trust pillar.
So when you ask them what,
Yeah. Yeah, themselves, this is very much going to be dictated on what you've kind of learned about them and their history of failure or their lack thereof, and then also just their language patterns. I forget whose call it was that I referenced earlier, where it was just so clear that this guy was not confident in himself. So you could just be picking up things that way. But then there also could just be the fact that they've joined 2, 3, 4 other courses and it didn't work out. And so within that, I've got to find out the reasons why they think that didn't work out. And if that person is telling me, well, you know, I'm just not really good with the tech stuff when it gets into the website stuff and the email autoresponder connections, it just frustrates me. And I end up, you know, kind of losing focus. Got it.
It's like negative self-talk about like certain things, like just saying like, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at that, I'm bad at this.
Yeah. Well, and also think about this is for a lot of these people who have been searching for, and granted, and let me ask you too, with your offer, are you dealing with newbies or are these people that are already running some level of business? Because I think you're selling something decently expensive for Dan.
Both ends of the spectrum. So people
Okay.
transitioning 9 to 5, and then also people who are making multi-8 figures. So
Yeah.
it's
So on its head, the trust in themselves for the multi-8 figure people, that is probably going to be a rare situation, right? Because to get to that level of success in their business, they have a pretty high level of confidence in themselves.
yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
I guess for me, my main question would be,
They're ready to go at another business. They're ready to make another jump at this.
I think you cut out. The only thing we heard you say just now was they're ready to take another go at this. They're ready to start another
Yeah.
business.
And so I don't know if you have any thoughts here, Josh, on stock questions. The reason that I don't have any is because it would be based off of what they told me or what I heard from them. I would just-
It's anything typically that's either about challenging or really trying to understand. So you ask them something to the effect of got it. And so you've been trying to create another source of income. What have you tried? Oh, well, I haven't tried anything. Okay. Any particular reason that you haven't taken action on something? Well, I'm scared. Well, I'm nervous. Well, I'm confused. Okay. Like it's when you start getting into what they've actually done, but then why haven't they done anything, or why didn't that work out? As the underground mentor said, it's when you start listening to their language and they start saying personal things like, oh, I am nervous, or I am confused, or, you know, I haven't done this before, as opposed to when they talk about the vehicles. And then we know obviously that's vehicle versus themselves, but it's trying to understand their mental model around that.
Because then when I hear them saying those things, at a certain point, I could stack them up and say, you know, I've heard you mention on 3 different occasions now being, you know, nervous, confused, and uncertain about being able to have a successful online business. Do you think that those thoughts, feelings, and emotions are part of, if not all of the reason that you haven't actually taken action on this yet? Yeah, it probably is. I hadn't thought about that. Okay. And so what are you going to do about that? Because the where this is coming from is I know they won't have success if they hold on to these. Like they're going to fail, or they're just not going to take any action at all. Because when they meet resistance, when things become somewhat challenging, which we know they will in entrepreneurship, they're just going to quit. And so we just have to basically dig into what they are telling us, because they don't even know that they're demonstrating those language patterns. They're not even aware of it. We are, though, because we know to listen for it.
One of the lines of questioning that we've used before is, okay, got it. And do you know anybody, either personally or, you know, maybe a wider circle, that has been able to XYZ figure this out? Got it. What do you think they were thinking and feeling when they were looking to figure this out? And they might say, well, they were probably nervous as well, or confused, or whatever. Okay. And what do you think is different to the way that they responded to those feelings compared to the way that you're currently responding? And you're starting to get into like an empowering version of an us versus them, helping them realize that, okay, these feelings are okay, but not if they are going to hold you back. That's a line of questioning that you taught me before, was that one.
Yes. What I enjoy about this is that the way you frame the questions is like it's from a sense of empowerment. It's not just going straight to the dark, because it empowers them instead of just making them feel bad about the situation. So it's powerful.
Yeah, it's trying to take them through a line of questioning that makes them realize they have a choice, they have control, they have the ability to take ownership and responsibility and do whatever they want. And hey, if you're telling me that you're perfectly fine continuing to have these thoughts and feelings and not getting to a second source of income, a successful e-com business where you can be at home or work from wherever you want or whatever, then sure, that's fine. But you're basically taking them through the questions to make them realize if they want this to actually happen, they have to change the way that they're making their choices and making their decisions. And there are other people that have gone before them and other people that will go after them that have responded differently, in this case, to these thoughts or feelings or, confusion or fear or whatever. So.
So I have one last question just before I jump off this. It's sort of related. So with call reviews, when you're looking through your own calls, I guess, analyzing, what have you found the most effective way to sort of analyze it? Do you go like full into every minute, like minute by minute, what you did right, what you did wrong? Or is it like a certain structure that you've found that's potentially better? Because I have just started doing daily call reviews in the last, I guess, 5 days since watching Commandment 2. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a certain structure to follow that's maybe
I
more
would,
effective.
yeah, I always used a method that the underground mentor taught me, although it actually wasn't exactly in this context, called the pruning shears of revision. If you imagine a cassette or an old CD or something that would have a track on it, an audio track, in olden things like cassettes or whatever, you could actually re-record over the old track. And so when I would listen to my old calls and I would be looking for improvements, as I was playing it, I would pause after I said something that was dumb or just not the best way. And I would literally re-say a better version. And so I was rewriting the memory of how that call could have gone by re-listening to the call review. I don't think it's that powerful to listen to a call and just have a sheet of paper that you're just writing notes on it. Like, yeah, that's fine for studying. But if you the mental model that I always used to use is, if I haven't done a call review and now feel like, literally physiologically feel like I could jump back on that call and do a 10x better job, then what have I actually done? All I've done is just studied what I did well or what I did wrong. But I want to know, okay, if I could go back in time to that call, I either would have closed them or I would have done everything the right way that I should have done. So I'm trying to rewrite the memory of that call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Underground mentor, you'll probably do a better job of explaining the pruning shears of revision, but
Yeah, that's powerful. Similar to how I have like done some like that in the past. I sort of started to veer away from that. So maybe I just go back to that, because I used to quote what I said wrong and then I would re-quote what I would say. However, I didn't really practice it out loud too much. It was more so just writing on a document, but it's good to know that.
no, you've got to relive it. Like, you've literally got to re-experience it. And I would say the words in my head, but sometimes I'd literally say them out loud. I would re-go through the whole experience as if I'm doing it again. And what was kind of spooky is I would then be like imagining how the prospect would have responded if I'd have said a better thing. So I'm completely rewiring my memory. One of the things, I don't know if we've gone into training, but the training on, you always want, oh yeah, we played it on a last one. You always want to fall asleep feeling like a winner. And so if you get to the end of the day and you had 3 calls that didn't close, and by the time you put your head on the pillow and go to sleep, you still feel like, well, even if I had a second shot at bat, I still would have not done any better. Then what progress have you made through the day? You want to make sure that you're rewriting those memories so that you're like, I'm a winner. Like, not necessarily they would have closed, but they either would have closed or I would have done everything to best serve the prospect and do a better job. Do you want to add to that, Underground Mental?
Yeah, I just have a tactical comment, because what you said in terms of the pruning shears of revision for, him improving his call reviews, that's literally everything that he needs to know on that. The only tactical comment that I have is to also review your calls audio only, so that you have time to review more calls. Because when you're reviewing and watching the video, that's great because you can see everything too, but you have to be sitting down and looking at a screen. Whereas if you strip out just the audio, you can start reviewing calls while you're at a gym workout, while you're doing tons of other things that, don't revolve you having to look at the screen. So if you want to just pump the numbers up in terms of sheer hours and volume, I would add that on to whatever else you're already doing.
Okay, yeah, that'll help. That'll probably
Because for someone who thinks like, oh, well, I'm not seeing the video, is it really going to be helpful? That when Josh got into closing, there were no video calls to review. It was only audio, and that was massively transformative for him. And so it's like, if you're usually listening to, rock or hip hop during your workout for an hour, why aren't you reviewing a call? You're probably listening to something during that time. So why not it be something that actually develops you and makes you more money?
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. That helps heaps.
Anything else, guys and gals?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, because earlier I was trying to ask I realized my thing was connected to my headset. Yeah, I'm a little confused on one thing, because and you said this earlier, Underground Mentor, that you've been listening to our call reviews, and you'll notice that we go into the deeper why questions much earlier on, as opposed to collecting more data points on the front part of the discovery. I'm a victim of that as well, but I've been, transitioning into collecting more data than going into the why. So I get confused because obviously the opening question is, essentially, why are you here? And a lot of times I get people that just pour it on, they go into the deep why. So then as I progress through the discovery into part two, like it's almost sometimes like things get a little out of order when going into the quadrant, why new reality. And I'm wondering, like, at that point for me, it kind of just gets redundant and I just go into the new reality. And I don't know if there's something I'm missing there as far as like what I could be doing differently, because they give you everything up front and then it's almost like then you collect data point after, and then you kind of
Yeah, well, so what I would do is if they're getting into kind of deep into their why, you're like, so why are you here? And they get on their soapbox. I'm taking notes down. I just got my little bullet points, got it. And so maybe if they got into something so deep that I want them to know that they were heard, I could give them a quick recap on a few of those, because maybe they tell like a super emotional story about, a family member that passed away. I don't want to go, okay, interesting. And so, what do you do for work? Right? Like that there's no calibration there. Right. So I may need to massage a little bit and, say X, Y, Z. Okay. Yeah, I understand. That sounds like it was super traumatic. And it sounds like there was a lot of other things that, took place here that, led to you wanting to do this. And I'm super curious to dig into those. I'm wondering, what is it that you're doing for work right now? Right? Do you see how I can still allow them to be heard and also keep things on topic? And within that whole soapbox rant, they might have actually just given me something that is more tactical and is more data. But I rather have those notes and go deep into the why later, as opposed to that second. So acknowledge in transition, or acknowledge and then dive into a sliver of something they gave you that was much more data related. Because if they rambled on for 2 minutes, they probably gave you a ton of shit.
Also, Lou, part of making a sale is filling in the blanks that the person hasn't filled in for themselves. And sometimes you'll get prospects that the blank that they haven't filled in is a personal and emotional reason, a burning desire or a burning problem. The other end of the spectrum is the person that just goes and tells everybody about their big reasons why and their fucking, victim mentality and all this. But the blank that they haven't filled in is drilling into the brass tacks of why that hasn't happened. Got it. How much money are you making? What are your expenses? How much have you saved? How much have you invested? How many different opportunities have you actually tried? How many hours did you put into those? What results did you get? So you got to think that when you're looking at the blank canvas of a prospect and trying to help them paint the picture, sometimes when I've found that when people get on the call and you ask them the opening question, they get into some pie in the sky reason why, very, very quickly, I'm thinking, okay, this is a person that I need to bring down to reality and get into specific brass tacks. Does that make sense? So you got to think which way are we? This way up, and we've got to kind of go this way, or are we this way up and we've got to go that way? But ultimately, they have to have a personal and emotional connection to what they want to do, but they also have to have the brass tacks crystal clear in their mind as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah, it's kind of like the front part of the call is more facts, whereas we'll allow in more feelings later in the discovery.
Yeah, that makes more sense. So get into more of the specifics, allowing them to just kind of come to that the very moment, the call, and then moving them more deeper into the why later. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I've found. Yeah.
You're both coming to the realization because they haven't figured it out about themselves and you don't know anything about them. So ideally, if you guys are both on the same page and this person is present and aware enough, it's clicking at a very similar time for both of you.
Got it. Makes sense.
You had mentioned Underground Mentor a couple of times ago when you were taking the polls for what we were going to talk about. I think it was 2 or 3 calls ago. One of the things that you had mentioned was the number one thing that you see all of us kind of holding all of us back. I'm not sure if you remember that or not, and if you would be willing to expand on that, or if that's a subject for another day.
Yeah, so it wasn't the number one thing, it was like the top things.
Okay.
'Cause I don't really know what would be the number one thing. I'd have
Okay.
to think about it and weight it, and I don't know. But a couple things that come to mind that I don't think is happening enough, because I feel like I've only seen 2 people post about it. Obviously, we had somebody in here just bring it up that they've been reviewing their calls over the last 5 days, which is great. I don't think across the board that that's happening enough. And I've said it a lot of times, but clearly there's a lack of belief or maybe just sexiness in actually doing it. Because if it was happening more consistently across the board, there would be people, you guys would be posting about it in the group. Holy fuck, I reviewed this call, I caught this, I realized this, mind fucking blown. And the fact that there's I can only think of 1 or 2 people who've posted in the group over the last couple months about that tells me that you're not fucking doing it at all, or the level and the amount that you're doing it in is just way too low. And it's
I'm guilty
massive
of
low
that.
hanging fruit.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
also
guilty
too,
of
yeah, and another way I can see it is when someone turns in their second or third call to be reviewed and they're making the same fucking
same
mistakes
mistakes. Right.
that I told you on the first fucking one. And so if I took the time to review your fucking call and I gave you very clear instructions, well, you should maybe have some notes on that. And then when you go and are reviewing a bunch of calls each week, maybe you should look at those notes and say, hey, am I still making that mistake? Because it should be
Right.
pretty fucking obvious. Because
Right.
like when I get your second, third, or fourth call, let's get to the new shit.
Mhm.
Because when I see the same shit, I yell at you like this, and then I just fucking cut the call short because I get pissed, or
Right.
I pretend to get pissed. So you you feel me coming across and communicating to you strongly. So like I
Right.
think it's dude, and just like I was saying a few minutes ago with like strip out the audio and start
Mhm.
listening to it when you work out or you're taking a walk or you're doing something else or you're making food in the kitchen. And I get that maybe it's not getting 100% focused attention like you would if you're sitting at your laptop with no other distractions. But I rather listen to that call for 30 minutes while you're making lunch or an hour at the gym and hear 85 or 90% of it than to be fucking playing some bullshit podcast that doesn't fucking matter or listening to some music that is, just giving you more mind viruses. So I think that's a major one.
I think you're right. And this is just an idea for Josh, and let me know what you and Josh think about this. I feel like one of the requirements before you upload a call for a review is you should have to review your own call first and show what level of self-awareness you have in reviewing your own call, and then have the Underground Mentor or Josh expand upon and point out things that you don't know what you don't know. So you review your call, you see what you see, and then they see something on a completely different level. Like you talking about the soapbox, like that was the biggest shift and development in my calls, is really being aware of that and trying not to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We need to develop some type of call review guidelines because there aren't any right now. You've seen me comment on a few posts where I say, hey, you should probably wait 4 weeks before you turn one in so you can have the basics down. And there's been people who've posted before that, and I'll still do the review on some occasions. But I do think having a more specific, streamlined way would benefit you guys more, because a part of the point that you're making or getting to when you say all that is like a lot of you are removing the responsibility of being better and taking away from your own power by like, please review my call. can you like look
Mhm.
at this? Like, like save me.
Right.
Like, we're not going to save you. No one here is drowning. So like, you have to be lifting yourself up, and we're here to obviously point out the things that maybe you can't see, but there's
Right.
I'm
Blind spots.
not coming up. Yeah, there's just a lack of responsibility sometimes when
Mhm.
someone is posting a call to be reviewed, immediately after they've just gotten some feedback, for example.
Right. That was something when I first joined this. I was like, okay, well, what's the process for like,
Yeah,
the
so we'll,
qualifications?
Josh and I will have some conversations around that, because it's kind of left to guess right now.
Mhm.
And I think there needs to be something a bit more formal there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me add a few things in there, because that was a few interesting points. So I take part responsibility for maybe some of you not spending enough time on the sales side of things. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the Launchpad is obviously very potent training, but it's not sales training. And so a lot of you are spending a lot of time and effort enjoying the Launchpad training, which I'm good to see. And I'm glad that you are actually going through it, taking action, buying the things, implementing the things. But that doesn't mean that you don't spend time actually listening to your calls and doing call reviews. They are complementary trainings. There is the internal mastery, which is the Launchpad, and there is all the trainings and the rants and the golden nuggets and these live Saturday trainings that you have from the Underground Mentor. The same amount of time, effort, attention, and we could call it investment that you're putting into the Launchpad trainings needs to be matched with everything you're doing on the sales side of things. It's not just the Launchpad guys and then turn up once a month to a Saturday training. It's they need to be at the same level of intensity and the same effort. Does that make sense? Okay, that's rant number one. Rant number two is when the Underground Mentor was saying, if you submit a call review and then the next call review, you're doing the same mistakes. I remember my process when the Underground Mentor would do my call reviews. And I only had a handful of, a few dozen call reviews total over a handful of years and all the training that I've had. But what made them so powerful is that when I had call review number one, I still remember to this day, call review number one, I made sure to not make any of those same mistakes in call review number two. Now, there was one period, there was about 2, maybe 3 call reviews. I don't know if you remember the Underground Mentor, where I made the same mistakes, and fuck me, I had my ass handed to me real fucking bad. Like I was whooped, a can of whoop ass from the Underground Mentor. And that never happened again. It was like, if I'm going to ask him for a call review, I better not fucking make the same mistakes ever again that he's already reviewed me on. Do you remember that when there was like a string of 2 or 3 and you were like, why the fuck are you coaching people on these calls? This is not what these fucking calls are for. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I had to convey to Josh in a way that he would understand. Don't waste my fucking time. Like the audacity for you to bring me the same obvious fucking mistake. What are you doing? You want to talk to me? It's $5,000 an hour, and you're sending me this fucking call review for an hour, and we're going over the same thing. So that's kind of the context of it. And it's the same thing with you guys posting stuff in the group. I want you to get the most out of it. I don't want to scream at you for making the same damn mistake and then cutting it short, because you don't get that much out of it. And it's a waste of my time. And so I want, like, let's go to the next level. And that's, to me, that's also where you're going to get the quickest growth and lock it in. Because it became clear, and I don't remember what the thing was, Josh, from the first call review, but there was something you were screwing up. It became
my
obvious.
first call review.
Yeah, and I pointed it out and I said, you need to get this handled. And until you get this handled, there's no point in moving on to the other stuff, because this is going to stop you from making sales.
Yeah, my first call review, the main meme was that how I word my introduction, hello, how are you, framing, like it needs to be like this. And you never, ever, ever once mentioned again to me how to say the introduction or how to say the framing. It was just one time. Whereas I've even had call reviews that I've done with some of you guys live, and I'm like, you didn't do the intro or the framing, how it is literally fucking written out for you in the 4 pillars. What, how many calls have you not been doing that for? Oh, well, I thought I could just skip a few words. No, and like key ones in the opening question, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that you're having in XYZ right now? And some of you just don't put right now at the end, and you get a long ramble from the prospect because you didn't say right now. Well, 3 years ago I started my business, and I said it's literally written out for you how to say the opening question. Now, obviously, change it contextually, but once you've gone through the 4 pillars, you should say the intro and the framing perfectly every single time. We should never be on a live call reviewing the opening of a call, and I'm like, well, you didn't even get the intro or the framing right. And then usually the reason you're bringing a call is you'll say, well, where did I go wrong in the discovery? Well, nowhere. You fucked up the opening question. And so now we're spending 10 minutes getting backstory on a person's business, and you're wondering why you ran out of time on the call, or you couldn't get into your line of questioning because you didn't do the opening question correctly. You didn't say XYZ right now, and now they've just given you a long tirade of information. So basically, don't make the same mistakes twice, and you'll make very, very quick progress. The final point I had was on Nicole's Finch's. She said, I did that on a call review that I submitted. I could hear the underground mentor in my head before I posted it. Really, really key point, because you will all find, if you've been on enough of these live trainings or you've had even a single call review, I remember that when I would review my own calls, I too would hear, this is what the underground mentor would have said in this scenario, or he would have done this, or he would have, showed up this way. And so don't underestimate how much of this stuff will have been downloaded into your head. Even if the underground mentor or I don't review your call, if you sit there and listen to it, you will be able to hear what one of us would have said. And so don't underestimate that stuff will have been downloaded into you. Many, many times now in my life, I'm thinking about a decision, and all I have to do is ask myself, what would the underground mentor do? And it may actually be a scenario we've never covered. We've never trained on it, or we've never had that conversation. But when you start to have a personal relationship with a mentor, as opposed to a course, you will start to pick up on the mental models and the patterns and be able to just kind of assume what they would do, and you'll be right as well.
I just gotta say the call reviews has probably been the most impactful, not only to me as a closer, but also for coaching my folks as well. Because once I started implementing that, and like you were saying, like hearing what would the underground mentor say here, like I've taken, one of Tony Robbins' coaching companies like up and doubled and tripled in closing, just from starting to review them and paying attention to their energy, the mismatch in energy and the little subtle nuances you guys are pointing out on those calls is absolute gold. It's worth every penny of why I'm in this mentorship, just for that reason alone. So thank you.
Also, watching the other call reviews that are not yours are very important, because for those of you that you've watched, you notice I'm not just teaching for the person who's on the call reviews. Sometimes I'll say, hey, anyone not named Jeremy, you should watch out for this, right? So like there's learning opportunities to go through there and say, oh man, like Tom was really screwing up blank, and the underground mentor was hammering him on it. Am I doing that? Let me go back through this call that I thought was going to buy from this week that didn't, and let me see if that's something that I'm screwing up. And so that comes back to like taking the accountability and also squeezing as much juice and value as you can out of the group. Because the question is, have you, like, if you go into the Underground Mentor Vault, you can see every fucking call review that I've done. I don't know how many are in there, but there's a lot of them. It's like, have you watched every single one of those? Probably not. Could be an epiphany in there for you.
Yeah, I've got a question about the pillar on the rapport as well, because like in home improvement, one of the things they're real big on is building rapport. And I had a mentor teach me that, for the first 10 minutes, spend time talking to them about anything but gutters, like point out, stuff you see on the walls or their cars or something to find. And you guys are like keep it to like 10 seconds, you build a little bit of rapport, and then you get on past that. Can you talk to me about the differences? Because I know some people that are like A types and drivers, they don't want to spend that time bullshitting, for 10 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between why you guys have such a short period of rapport building versus like 5 or 10 minutes of it?
Because we only got an hour, baby, and we got to get
Okay.
into the real shit. And we're also,
Right.
most of the time we're selling a pretty expensive thing here, $5,000 to $20,000. Whereas if I roll up to somebody's house and I'm going to sell them gutters for $2,000, maybe I will kick it with them and make a little more bullshit rapport. And right there's a lot more for me to make rapport on and walking through their house. Oh shit, Miami Hurricanes fan, da 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 da. Right? You can kind of do that, but at the end of the day, keeping it quick and getting into it is just tried and true.
Also, remember, we're not saying, hey, don't get into rapport and then just smash through a discovery in 5 minutes. We're not. We're trading that time to actually really take the time and effort and care on the stuff that matters. We're not. I'm sure you're not picking up on this, but like, we're not saying, oh, just don't spend any time with them. Just get into making the sale as quick as possible. Figure out they got a problem, sell them something, and get out of there. No, we're saying you got an hour and you want to spend 40, 50 minutes figuring out in this problem, in this context, a lot of detail, a lot of clarity. We just don't have time to be also figuring out how long they've been a fan of this football team and why, and how many kids they've got. Like, no, it's so, yeah.
Another thing is it puts you at a massive risk of allowing the prospect to lead the call, because while you're sitting there being a little rapport bitch, at any point they can go, so yeah, I'm curious, what is it you guys do in the XYZ thingy? Now you're not leading anymore. And so that kind of rapport, it's very floaty. It's not grounded. It's not leading. And so best to avoid 10, 20 seconds, recognize them as a human being, recognize them as another soul across from you, that they're not just another sale, another number. Like, hey, I'm looking deeply into your eyes. And then you say, hey, I know we've got limited time. Are you ready to jump in? I even asked for your permission.
Mm-hmm.
I cleared it with you first. All right, you're cool with it. Great. So front part of this call is about XYZ. And if, we have alignment there, we'll jump into what it is we do. Does that sound fair? Sure. Great.
Would it also be fair to say that, like, when you're really asking these deep questions, that's a way of building rapport as well?
Sure.
Way more impactful than
I mean, if we play this right, they're going to tell us things in 5 to 15 minutes that less than the amount of people they could count on one hand even know about them.
Right. Thanks.
One thing I wanted to mention that has really helped me, that training in the classroom, studying closing, where you're mimicking what the underground mentor is saying, his tonality, you're writing it down and just really embedding it into your mind. That's really been helpful when doing the call reviews. Yeah,
everything's the words, the tonality. You've got to study it. You've got to embed it into you. I spent so many times listening to the way the underground mentor would say something and say it out loud again and again and again and again, just to get the change in my identity. Anybody else?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Jeremy, I think you just like rapport, man. I just think you like getting on those calls and building rapport. And so that might just be a thing that is your own internal block of thinking that you need that rapport to ask the deep questions. But yeah, and what Nicole and Josh were saying, I know, Josh, back in the day, you would listen to, those things on loop over and over and over and
hours
over
and hours and hours and hours.
And so that's another thing when it comes to certain pieces of content in the mastermind, the things that were, the most profound for you the first time you listen to them, or maybe were more confusing and harder for you to understand the first time you listen to them. Are you going back through things a second, third, and a fourth time? Like that's where the mastery is. You know, when Josh had some of the calls for the offer, the first offer that he was on where, you know, I had already closed business on, he listened to some of those calls 30, 40 times. I don't know what the number was, but they were
400 times.
there you go.
I know the entire call and every word that comes out of your mouth still to this day off by heart. For
See,
5
like
of them,
that's
like every single word. Yeah.
That's the difference. You know, Jeremy asked about, you know, what are people not doing, or what do you need to do to be a unicorn closer? Like, think about how retarded it sounds that he listened to the same call 300 or 400 times. Like, if we asked the average person outside of sales that question, they would say, what's wrong with him? Why would I do that? I don't know. Seemed to have worked out for Josh. And so that also goes back into the recent, you know, competing versus dominating. Someone who just wanted to compete wouldn't listen to it 300 or 400 times. Somebody who wanted to dominate would say, well, the craziest motherfucker out there probably listened to it 30 times. So that means I need to listen to it 300 to 400 times if I want to dominate them.
And the other thing is that they potentially, if they listen to it 30, 40 times in the first few weeks or few months, when they start getting on the phones and they're, you know, on the field live, they'd stop listening to them. I still listen to those calls 4 years later, a couple of times a month. Still listen to them.
Probably just,
and that's 4 years later. What's that?
Probably just a laugh. Do you have a recording of the one where the guy asked like the question where you would expect me to go on this big long qualifying thing, and I go, correct. And then he buys.
Andrew?
I think it might be him.
I've got them, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure which bit that is, because you might be talking about Martin Sangard or you might be talking about Andrew.
Andrew sounds the most familiar.
Andrew was the asshole. Andrew was the one that you held back for a few months before you gave me that call review, and you said, "Hey, now you're ready. You can listen to this one and see how we handle this."
We'll
Yeah.
try to dig up that clip for you guys.
Yeah, I've got them.
It's going to be a bit of a cheat question, but would you ever post one of UM's live calls in the mastermind?
UM told me don't.
Not.
So.
But
you got to get to level 10 in school for that.
Yeah, I want to. I do.
Points.
I do want to dig up that one little section of that call, because when it happened, my business partners at the time, as we were, you know, flushing out that offer, and these were like the first sets of clients that were coming on board, they heard that part of the call and they lost their fucking mind, because it was just one of these very abrasive, getting ready to make you qualify yourself questions. And I just said one word, correct. And then he fucking bought. And they were like, what the fuck is this? So that we'll see if we can pull that out. I want to hear that just for a good laugh. But really, that shit's pretty old overall. I mean, that's 4 or 5 years ago. Us doing role plays, like if you want to hear what I would say and I would do now, that's the freshest stuff. So
I'm going to challenge that and say the opposite, though, because if you listen to some of the scripted selling stuff 4 years from now, you'd be like, the fuck is this? I've heard this from 50,000 sales reps. If I listen back to your old calls, I'm like, these are still fucking incredible. And that's 5 years later. So I would say it's the opposite. And it's because it's not a script. It's not a script. And all 5 of them sound completely different in the words you're saying. Even the tonality is slightly different depending on. Yeah, I remember I asked you about the Andrew. I was like, how come with Andrew, you didn't really ask that many questions? You basically just said, yep, correct, cool, and so, or, you know, how so? And it was because he showed up with a massive ego. And so you just let him bleed out. And then one of the other calls, there was a guy, Moses, the younger guy, the Asian guy. You had to ask him a lot of questions and we're kind of leading him through the conversation. You can't have that flexibility if everything is like, okay, this is the script, these are the 5 sections, I've got to cover these 20 questions. You just won't be able to adapt like that. So I think it's cool that 4 years later, they're still the best sales calls I've ever heard. So by fucking far. So that's in the master's program. You get the
All righty, everybody. I guess we'll close it out here. I'll get this uploaded into the mastermind here over the weekend. And then I'll drop this photo as a post, and then you can throw in your comments, or if you want to eventually attach your documents and your write-outs for each one of these quadrants, that would be the next thing to work on here.
Thank you.
Thank
Josh,
you.
could I ask you a quick question about the launchpad?
yeah, go for it.
It's just I'm in the schedule mode, like in the habits and everything. And one thing I was confused about, like obviously you mentioned that like the day before you want to write down walk again, because you're still doing it every single day. What are the things that you write down Sunday evening for the week?
Anything that's an like an unregular thing. So like if next week I've got, you know, as a one-off occasion, I've got to go to the bank, I'll write that in, so I block it off on my time. But everything that is just routine, the night before, I'm writing those things in, so I'm sort of mentally rehearsing in my mind, waking up the next morning, going for my walk, waking up the next morning, having my cold shower, waking up the next morning, sitting down, taking my call. Do you want to put that on a Visa? Yeah. What's the long card number? That stuff, I want to play it in my mind the night before. But anything that's a random occurrence on a Sunday, I'm looking ahead for the next 7 days and thinking, okay, I need to massage my schedule a little bit because I have a few random things that are going to move things around a little bit. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And like, for example, if you have a lower lead flow at a certain week and you have that normally blocked off for calls, would you then like put in, for example, prospecting like the night before at that time? Or like, how would you make that up?
Yeah, if on the Sunday I'm looking at the week ahead and I'm thinking, okay, this week is a little bit slow, I'm gonna now add in some extra times to compensate for that. Yeah, that's more sort of seasonal change or week by week change. Yeah, I would do that on the Sunday.
Cool.
Sorry, just a quick little thing that I was thinking about, because there's a lot of topics that you went over, Josh, and a lot of the weekly trainings. Sometimes I go back to them, but I don't know if this is in your guys' plans or not. But I was wondering if you would like be making like separate videos going over sort of the presentations you were doing in those live calls, just so they're like in like separate videos, if that makes sense. Separate from the entire call that week, because obviously they're quite like 5 hour long sessions, right? And maybe the presentation was like an hour of it. So I was wondering if you're
you're meaning on our weekly Wednesday calls?
Yeah, weekly Wednesday one.
Yep, I'll cut out some of the. I mean, to be honest, the presentations that I've done as an ad hoc thing, they're things that are going to be put into the Launchpad or things that are going to be put in a different module. I just ended up doing some of the live trainings to get feedback from you guys. But yeah, those will become standalone. Yep.
Okay,
question.
Awesome.
Cool, guys. Well, if that
one
is
last before you hop off.
Yep.
With
Go on,
the
Shay.
first pillar now plus attempts to cross the river, something I notice, especially in my space, is that these people are typically booking multiple calls with other coaches, courses, and all that different thing. Is that something I weed out in the first pillar, now plus attempts to cross the river, that they've booked calls with multiple people? And if so, if they have booked multiple calls, do I even proceed with the rest of the call from there on, or how do I proceed from that?
I mean, yes, you definitely want to figure that out. I would probably figure it out in that quadrant. Depends how the person is showing up when you ask them, okay, got it. Is there anything else you've tried in the past? No. Okay. And is there anything else you're exploring now as you know, a way to get this solved? If they say, yeah, I've got, 4 different calls. Okay, great. What are you looking to get out of the range of different calls that you have? Well, pricing, differences, this, that, and the other. I might get into, okay, and so I'm curious if you were on one of those calls and you found that, the investment makes sense, the way that they're going to get you the result felt like it was perfectly aligned, would you still hold off and go through all of those other calls? I would probably want to know that. Yeah, because if so, I'm curious your thoughts, Underground Mentor. I don't know if I would pitch them.
Yeah, reason I asked is because I had this situation come up recently where call went really well and it got to the end that he had another call booked and we had a follow-up call scheduled and then it came back that it came down to price, and I feel like I definitely could have in the discovery somewhere that if price was the deciding factor, I should have weeded that out before even getting into the pitch.
Oh, 100%. I'm not getting into the pitch without knowing in the discovery that they've got other calls coming up and what are the deciding factors? Can they rank order them for me? Get into their mental model. So I might get into something like got it. And so, you know, if there was one program that you felt was going to get you either a better result or get that result for you quicker, or just ultimately be more aligned with how you want to get the result, but the investment was slightly more, I'm curious how you would go about making your decision then. I'd probably want to get into their mental models. For the Underground Mentor, I'm curious if you have a conclusion on whether you would even roll into the 4 phases if they had other calls booked that week.
It would be very, very case by case.
Yeah, I thought you'd say
I
that.
can't think of like, well, always do this. Because there's a few things here. Like, this could be some different information. What if I found out that the 2 other calls they have booked this week are tomorrow in the morning? That's a new piece of information, because even if I have a price drop, an action takers bonus for them taking action on the call, I could still pitch and then give them a time window of, okay, cool. You like what we're doing, you can afford it, you're in, you just have to make sure the 2 things that you're learning about tomorrow aren't a better fit than this is. Okay, that's fair. So why don't we do this? You know, tomorrow by on or before 5 p.m., you're going to text me and let me know what your decision is. And if I hear from you by then we can keep the incentive-based. Do you see where I'm going with that? So I would really dig into it. I wouldn't have any set thing on, I will pitch them, I won't pitch them. I'm going to get as much information as I can, and then I'll just make a gut call.
Okay. Yeah, that's good because I do have things on the offer, not necessarily price driven, but say, for example, there might be like 6 months of access to XYZ tool. And I'm able to like be like, oh, well, I can give you 12 months access to that instead. And like the thing is, it's very valuable. So that's valuable for me to know. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope.
No, I'd just like to say thank you very much, guys. Awesome session today.
Thank
Our
you very
pleasure.
much. That's great.
Let's get some reps in, Ben.
Exactly. Let's do it. Let's make some money, boys and girls.
Love it,
Later,
guys.
everybody.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.